everyone, Dr. David Wallace, and I'm here in Indiana, and I'm about to give a violin masterclass at the Masterworks Festival. And you may have seen they've had a storm recently, lots of trees down. Anyway, being here reminded me that last summer when I was here, I made a lesson for you about conquering stage fright and achieving peak performance when you're performing for a masterclass situation. And so I wanted to take the time to upload that video, and who knows, maybe it'll help someone who's playing this year. Check it out. I am in Winona Lake, Indiana, where it's the 4th of July and fireworks are going off. But I also gave a master class this afternoon for the Masterworks Festival. It was a violin class. And so I thought it'd be a good chance to talk about playing for master classes and handling your nerves in that situation, because it's a special one. You know, it's not like your everyday performance. And I'm happy to say that this afternoon, the three young ladies who played for me handled their nerves very well. And so they really played wonderfully and did the best of their abilities. Okay, so the small town Hoosiers seemed hell-bent on exploding things on the 4th of July, so the outdoor vlogging didn't happen, and instead I'm just going to talk to you from my room. But the content is still just as good as if I were sitting on a park bench somewhere out in the square near the lake. Just won't be quite as scenic. So, master classes. Interesting situation. The master class is a form of teaching that generated in the late 19th century, where basically very famous virtuosi started to have classes somewhat publicly in which a small group of students would gather and a few would play and would get critiques for everybody else. And it became actually a pretty lucrative way of teaching. And there's a great book by the violinist Joseph Szigeti on the violin, and he has a whole chapter or section where he's denouncing master classes and saying it's not a good form of pedagogy, it's not a good way to learn, it's artificial, and the real way to learn violin is through a deep apprenticeship. And this seems to be a form that's more about glorifying the master than it is about keeping the student's best interest. And I think to some degree he was right with the way that some master classes have been designed to really showcase a teacher with a bunch of accolades and reputation. However, I do think it is a very useful way to learn as well as to perform, and you can gain some really wonderful teachings, and I've certainly gained some wonderful teaching from the master classes that I played for and attended. But let's talk about the situation. A master class is somewhere between a whole lot of different things. It's not a private lesson because there's an audience. It's not really a performance in the sense that you're just walking and performing, because it's expected that you will be critiqued. And so in many ways, a lot of the same strategies that apply to giving a good, solid, confident performance also apply to the master class, but there's that caveat of I'm going to be critiqued at the end of this, and I'm going to get some feedback. And so that sets you up to be self-critical as well as much more aware of what are other people thinking, what is the master thinking. So what are your goals in a master class? Let's break it down. First of all, you're getting to perform music, so you're sharing it with the audience who came to hear the class, to any colleagues who were there, as well as the esteemed master. So it is your chance to give. So that's goal number one. Give your best, give your all, share what you can to the best of your ability. Goal number two is to walk out of there with some useful advice or strategies to take yourself to the next level. And so if you focus on those two goals, the pressure will be less on you. So that said, there still is this artificial performance and the situation of people judging you and comparing you, perhaps to how you sounded last week, perhaps to how the guy before or after you sounded. And you cannot escape that head games will happen. I cannot tell you how many weird things and I've heard said after master classes by people who played for them, and they felt disappointed in how they played or how things were received. I've heard people often say,
She must have not thought I was a very good musician, because all she did was spend time on technical things. So she must have thought I was not at a level where she could talk about music and interpretation. I've heard that one a lot. And believe me, I understand why. Because if people are just treating you like you haven't quite mastered your instrument yet, and they can't even begin to talk about music until you improve some things, well, it does leave you feeling like you're maybe not the most musical person. Conversely, I have seen people who are very hard on themselves play, feel bad about how they play, get mostly praise, which did not fall on their ears or their brains in a way where they said, yes, I can walk away feeling proud, because they weren't happy with themselves. And the fact that someone else expressed satisfaction let them feel like this person does not think I'm capable of better, or they just don't have very good standards. And so this was a real waste of time and a letdown for my expectations of having some advice that would change my life. But don't go there. If you find those head games happening, just stop, refocus, and turn your attention on the music and the act of performing, not what you think of yourself and not what you think other people are thinking about you, because that will prevent you from getting all benefit from the class. During the class itself, your goal is to explore things in real time. When the teacher, who is the master, gives you some feedback, it's your chance to try a few things. And if they work better, that's great. Remember them, remember the feeling, remember the sound. If it doesn't work, well, sometimes things don't work right away, and sometimes teachers don't always give out the best advice all the time. So don't think it's your fault if something doesn't work right away. The other thing that I think is important is be patient in a master class. Just like you didn't learn to play or sing overnight, it takes time to assimilate a new suggestion, especially if it's a teacher you don't know and a new idea. Some things may make an instantaneous change, and that's great. If that happens, remember it. Make a mental note. Also, tape record your master classes if you can, or take notes so that way you remember what happened. So during the class, be patient. Take in the advice, try it as well as you can. And if the person asks you a question and you don't know the answer, you don't have a good answer, don't sweat it. Just know that part of the reason you go to a master class is to get some information you don't have. And usually when the teacher's giving you a question, it's not an exam question, but they're trying to understand what's going on in your head. How are you practicing? What are your habits? What has your teacher told you? So that way he or she can take what you've got already and make it better with some additional suggestions. And after the class, well, there can still be some head games that go on. People may say something to you, positive or negative. The teacher may have something to say to you. Your own regular teacher may have some comments. But you will also have self-talk evaluating how you did, how you felt, and all those sorts of things. And when that internal dialogue or self-talk or even conversations with other people happen, keep your eye on the prize, which is you playing better. Whatever just happened, however you just played, that's the past. The future is how can you apply what you learned to your next experience and your next performance. I had some wonderful experiences over the years playing for some really fine musicians and teachers, and I want to share with you my worst masterclass experience because it might help you see a few things about what to do or what not to do. I'll also say this was not the worst masterclass experience in the sense that I didn't learn anything, because actually it probably improved me about as much as anything, but it was the worst as far as what happened psychologically. So I was just 20 years old. I was studying Prokofiev's First Violin Concerto, which many of you may know is one of the hardest violin concertos in the repertoire. And I was playing it for a master class by the great Korean-American violin soloist Young Uck Kim, who was in town playing with the Houston Symphony. And I played part of the first movement of the concerto. I did not know how to play the whole movement yet. And it wasn't totally ready, and it wasn't perfect. And then when he worked with me, he just kind of put the concerto aside and just worked with me on tone. And how can I get rid of so much extra tension that I had in my playing and in my technique? How could I improve my tone, and how could I get my sound all the way from my back and some of these very deep muscles? And there was one moment in the class where my violin emitted a sound that was just one of the most golden, beautiful sounds that I had produced on a violin up to that point. And that was valuable. I tried to remember that feeling. But the whole time up here, I was a mess. I knew I had not played well. I did not feel good about what I had done. There were so many important people in the audience. There were friends and colleagues from my teacher's violin studio. There was the concert mistress of the Galveston Symphony with whom I had studied for a whole summer. There was my teacher. And people whispered at certain points in the class, and your brain goes immediately to the negative when people are whispering. That's just how we are. So I'm thinking, they're whispering, they're talking about me, and of course they're not saying anything nice about me, because if they were saying something nice, they wouldn't need to whisper. And I was really even just having trouble staying focused on what was happening on stage. And I'm glad I did have a little bit of presence of mind, and so the things that Young Uck Kim was showing me, I actually was able to engage and take some of that away and really bring into the practice room the next day. But after the class, I was just really still a mess, because people weren't talking to me. No one said anything. No one came up and said anything. And so I'm thinking, oh, that was so bad. People can't even come up and talk to me. And in some ways, that was not such a bad thing, because I would much rather people avoid me or not talk to me if they thought I'd played poorly, and I had played poorly, than if they came up to me afterwards, oh, that was so good. You're so wonderful. You're such an inspiration. I love your playing so much. Because I hate it when people flatter like that. Because I want people to be straight shooters. If something's good, they should say it's good. If it's awful, well, maybe they can be tactful or polite or say nothing, but they definitely shouldn't come up and say how wonderful something is. People should tell it like it is, and I try to do that. So in any case, I had played this class knowing I hadn't played well, knowing that I hadn't played perfectly, knowing that everybody knew I hadn't played that well, and knowing that no one really came to me with something good. I had to do some recovery work. Fortunately, the next day, Young Uck Kim was playing the Stravinsky Violin Concerto with the Houston Symphony, and a lot of us went backstage and talked to him after the performance, and he had some lovely words to say, some very kind things, and I talked with him about how the things he was showing me about how to improve my tone, how to get that sound from my back, and to really have my whole body engaged in the art of making tone. He smiled and had some very kind words, and so it showed me that, okay, even if he knew I was a work in progress, and even if he knew that I had just started this piece, and so I wasn't ready to give a really fully prepared performance, he still respected me as a musician, as a learner, as a violinist, and he was glad that he had been able to help me. And so that, just even that one short conversation was a very helpful thing. So I seriously doubt Young Uck Kim is watching this, but if you are, man, hey, I love your playing, and I really appreciate what you did for me in that class and for my tone. So that's all I have to say about master classes. I believe in playing for them, I believe in learning from them, and I believe in giving them. And giving a good master class is a whole different topic, but that's really not the area of stage fright. I will say one final thing, and I've known people who are nervous about playing for master classes and they don't want to. And I would say if you are totally not wanting to play a master class or for a particular person who maybe scares you or intimidates you, don't play. Don't put yourself or anyone else through that. You know, it's okay to opt out and say, yeah, you know, I like a lot of situations, but this one's not for me. And that's an okay attitude. If your teacher really wants you to play and thinks it'll be a good step for you, and it's one of those things that you know might be good for you, but you're just a little bit reluctant, and it's like the equivalent of eating some vegetables that don't taste good to you, well, you know, in that case, go ahead and maybe give it a shot. But be sure that when you walk into this kind of situation that you're ready for it psychologically. So again, thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you want to catch some more hints about stage fright, and leave some of your own comments about masterclass experiences, both good or bad, in the comments below. And if anybody else has some feedback for how to have a good masterclass experience, your thoughts are welcome. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Happy practicing, and go conquer your stage fright.
I'm Dr. David Wallace. I just gave a master class at the Masterworks Festival. Playing for a master class is a different kind of situation for nerves and for keeping one's composure and mental game. So if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like or subscribe. And stay tuned. I've got a huge piece of life-changing news that I'm just about to share with you, so stay tuned. Take care.